Audio's working. All right. We had a little bit of a pause there. What's up? How much do I hate Windows? It's difficult to describe. Microsoft destroyed my last Wednesday stream. Now I'm getting these weird message boxes from the new update. Great to see you, Windows. Anyway, guys, welcome to our stream. We're having a short streams in the morning this week and next week because of the confusion around the wonders of daylight savings time. I had to push a lot of my appointments up an hour, so we're just doing an hour and 20 minutes. Usually my streams are 2.5 hours. It's like a half stream. We're going to do some games of Johannes Zukertort that was scheduled for last week, and we didn't get to have the stream because of technical difficulties. So welcome everybody. Astrobate, JCS, good to see you. Virat Carlson. Let me fix the board here. Yeah, we didn't get to these games last week. Normally I would do 2 stages for the stream where we do analysis of a famous player, his games, and then do some opening analysis. Today we're mostly going to just focus on the games of Zukertort. I don't have as much time. So we're going to get right to it. One of the greatest players of his generation, Zukertort, was from what is modern day Czechia. He was from Prague. Basically, a lot of people considered him a threat to Steinitz, but he lost their only World Championship match very convincingly in 1886. Nevertheless, he was one of the greatest players pre-1900. Played some very impressive games. Actually, the one that I really love I can't find. I'll let you guys know if I can find it. I've got 3 games in the study. Now, where's my study? Where's my study? Here it is. Getting, I don't know, a 5+3 challenge, but I'm not playing Blitz today. Fast booster. Alright, I gotta turn the challenges off. We're gonna get that again. Let's just turn it off. Alright, so privacy. Let other players challenge you. Never. Only friends. Alright, let's do that. Back to the analysis now. So I want to go over first this game here, Zukertort Blackburn, London 1883. I've got 2 games against Blackburn from this tournament in London 1883 where he won. I mean, Zukertort won this tournament. It was Blackburn, Steinitz, basically many of the strongest players in the world. Yes, an insane amount of trouble. That's right, an insane amount. I'll just sit here and get challenged by people who are ignorant. Anyway, alright, so Zukertort is playing white. Let's focus on the important things here, like analyzing a game by one of the greatest players in history. It's like yesterday when Bob was like, what's that poster on the back of your room? Like, I'm trying to talk about important stuff. C4 E6. This is Zukertort versus Blackburn, played in London 1883. I'm not sure which round this was. Zukertort playing white. Now check it out. C4, which is awesome. Did you know you didn't know the Czech Republic's not the Czech Republic anymore? That's why you didn't know we didn't do a stream last week. JCS not keeping up on your Eastern European country names. C4, E6, E3. And, you know, it's unusual to see a player pre-1900 playing such hyper-modern stuff. So that's cool. He did, you know, he's famous for playing the Zukertort, what we call today the Zukertort, or Collie Zukertort. But this is different. He's actually opened with C4. We still see of familiarity with B3, as you'll see a little bit later. Basically not a dangerous opening. You know, the worst case scenario is white plays D4. Black has a solid position. So it's not a challenging opening really, but unusual for that era. Most people played E4. Knight F3 now, B6. Also very hyper modern play here from Blackburn, if you think about it. I mean, it's strange to see. It's strange to see black play b6. Not everyone would have done that in those days. Yeah, at least you didn't say Czechoslovakia. But a lot of hypermodern chess going on here for a game from 1883. You've got c4 and b6. Mostly like chess was played classically, e4, e5, d4, d5. Toward the end of the 19th century, we start to see a lot more d4, but still e4 was extremely dominant. Now, white should probably, objectively, white should probably play d4, maybe b3 and bishop e2. But really my reasoning for that is that if I play d4 now, I can develop my bishop to its best square at d3. It's a standard e3 Queen's Indian. But instead he plays bishop e2, which is a bit too passive. I've got this idiotic Lead Chess Opening Explorer turned on. Let me just see if the masters... No, they got ate by the dog. Eaten. It was eaten by the dog. Alright, never mind. The data center fire. Oh, I don't want... Yes! Oh, Lead Chess is on fire. Alright, well, I'm sure they'll fix it 1 year. There's just 100,000 players on here every day. Nothing major. Don't need to fix it or anything. Let me go back. So, bishop e2, a little too passive. White playing kind of lamely in the opening. Bishop b7, castles. And now d5. d5 is fine for black. I like black's handling of the opening. But again, hypermodern player might not go for the central pawn push. We love Blackburn too. I mean, he's a great player. He's playing black here, naturally. The Black Death. And now, b3 or d4, we have d4. So white is essentially playing a little passively in the opening. Bishop d6. Now, it's ironic that Zukertort is playing white, and Blackburn is playing the Zukertort. This is his patented setup, like bishop d6, bishop b7 with d4, and normally we would see actually Zukertort playing the white pieces with the same setup that Blackburn's using here. Kali Zukertort system, where you play the Kali, but you develop your bishop to the fianchetto on the queen side. Basically, Blackburn has been given, free reign to develop actively. Now knight c3. It's like white is black and black is white, basically. So the opening here, not critical in this game at all. White didn't really get anything. Castles. Now, this is probably the best move, I would imagine. b3. b3. Knight on bd7. Bishop b2. And that's the best setup that you can do from that point forward. White has a decent amount of coordination. His bishops are at least not too close together. The pieces are spaced out a little bit. I still prefer the bishop on d3. And one advantage here of the bishop on e2 is that if black tosses a knight into e4, we can take it without getting forked. Again, white's playing a kind of defensive setup so far. But now Blackburn maybe should prepare the following move with a6. This is the standard plan in the Kali Zukertort. Watching out for knight b5. And I guess after a6, black's doing fine. Can I fix this opening explorer to work again? Alright, I guess not. It's really not important. I don't care about bullet games. So, he plays queen e7, which is like very likely a positional mistake. Allowing white to play knight b5. Good eye by Zukertort. Of course, he's facing his own favorite setup. This bishop here is going to be forced to exchange itself off for the knight, or go to b4 where it gets trapped. He basically gives up the dark square bishop, which is his good bishop technically, with the central pawns fixed on white squares. So this is a major blunder, a strategic blunder by black. Now knight e4, he just grabs the bishop, the best attacker. So far, nothing special happening. This is like, okay, white played kind of a passive game, but he picked off the bishop. C takes d6. I like this recapture, Schlechter. Astrobate, how would you recapture? With a pawn, right? We like that knight on e4, and the pawn recapture is cool. Controlling central squares. Don't be too dogmatic about being unwilling to have double pawns. These double pawns are going to trade themselves off anyway. So white played a very mild-mannered game now. Now knight d2, where most players would play knight d2 thinking, okay, this is a passive move. The knight on e4 is a strong piece. I mean, basically, this was a kind of defensive game by white thus far. Yeah, you definitely don't want to take with the queen there. I mean, this pawn controls the central squares and takes these. Particularly e5 is important. Taking that outpost away from white. You're not going to get stuck with double pawns either. So taking with the queen or the knight is inferior to taking with the pawn. Definitely a better move. It also opens up the c file for black, which might be useful. This is a good game by both sides so far. You know, very modern sort of feel to it. Knight d2. I mean, Karpov could be playing white here or something. And now I think black... I really don't know. I mean, I think that black should just play simply. Maybe just trade knights on d2. And white's slightly better because of the bishop. It's not that great, though. I mean, it might go to a3 and pester that pawn on d6 at some point. It's just a very small advantage to white. But Blackburn here plays knight f6. And it doesn't really do anything, honestly. You know, you just play f3. That was the plan anyway. Obviously, that's why he moved his knight away. He also could have played, for example, speaking of Karpov, knight e1. An even more aggressive move, essentially, where we're not even going to trade that off. We can play like f3 and just kick the knight out. I would expect some kind of Dutch-like game after f3, knight f6, maybe knight d3. Do you think it's worth considering leaving black with superfluous knight? Yes. Well, I mean, yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about in a way. Just leaving him with his knight getting kicked away. Yeah, I mean, maybe we just play knight e1. This is also good. After this, and now, if you really want to be nuts, you could play like knight b1. That's pretty extreme. I wouldn't be surprised if like Stockfish busted the knight b1, but it's probably not. Let's see. Dude, that's the second best move according to the engine. Wow. Is that what you meant? Knight b1 is cool. I mean, we're going to play f3, and now these knights are really embarrassed. You know, I see a lot of people making this mistake constantly in any kind of closed queen pawn games. They're always like revolving their knights, even when it's not appropriate. I mean, here actually, the knight on d7 usually is important for controlling e5 and like c5. In Blackburn's defense, he has the pawn there now, so that isn't so critical. I see a lot of people going to f6 with their knights when there's a big fat weak square on e5, which is usually a terrible mistake. So at least he's not leaving this like great weakness on e5. But yeah, I mean, JCS, you're pointing out an important strategic idea, this concept of superfluous knights. So when the knights overlap with each other, it's normally not a good thing. They're taking away, you know, each other's squares essentially, and they're wasting efficiency. You want to control, you know, as many squares as possible, not necessarily overlapping. Knight d2. This is cool though. This is like one of the best moves on the board. The idea would be that ultimately, like, our knight can go to c3 once we kick the knight out of e4. All right, thank you for the follow from Felix. So this is a game we're analyzing from White's perspective. Zukertort versus Blackburn, London 1883. He could have played knight b1. This is like, okay, allowing black to trade pieces here gives him a little closer, gets back a little closer to, you know, a holdable game. Takes, queen takes, but I still think that white is better. The main thing is the bishop on the long diagonal. You know, it doesn't look like it's open now, true, but it has potential to get open. Now black gives up his center with d takes c4. This is an interesting moment, you know. If he allows white to exchange on d5, what's he going to do? Take with the piece or take with the pawn? I mean, you could get a situation like this. Let's say like rook c8. takes. Is it insane to consider this type of move? I'd like a lot better if black could get the white square bishops off the board by exchanging those pieces off somehow. But in some situations, this isn't so bad. You know, we have pressure here on the e3 pawn. Maybe it's worth considering. Again, being creative and open-minded with the pawn structure. Because if you take with a piece, you're just getting rolled by the center. That looks promising. Although still, it's not winning. I mean, black can defend. Maybe try to trade off the bishop pair. White will be slightly better. Easy position to play for white. So he gives up the center with takes. Now here is an interesting position. Zukertort didn't want to get his c-pawn, you know, becoming a target with pawn takes. I would normally want to take back with the pawn. I know Vera Carlson. Oh, you mean there. Okay, taking back with the pawn on d5. Here also, debatable decision. I normally want to build my center and take toward the center, but I think this pawn is going to become a bit of a liability. So very positional game going on here. But unfortunately, Zukertort wanting to win, you know, getting the symmetrical structure here is not that great. Black is okay. This move, I'm very skeptical of d5. It looks committal. Obviously, like, white is going to play e4 at some point. But maybe black should consider playing for e5. So that he doesn't have a bad bishop on b7. After d5, his bishop is really blocked in on b7. And the e5 square is weak. Bishop d3, rook f c8, rook a e1. I mean, consider this like an exchange Slav. The c file. Oh, the c file. So most beginners here would play rook c1 and vacuum the pieces off the board. But there's no entry point. No entry point, no entry point, no entry point. This is an important factor to consider when you're talking about a position with an open file. Can you just ignore the fact that black's controlling this open file? Make your bishops great again. But this move is a major, major sign of aggression. He's like, I'm not going to trade pieces, and I'm going to play e4, and I don't care if it's obvious to you or not. Rook c7, and it's like Slav or Caro-Kann e4. And now black could consider taking, but check it out. I mean, if you go like this, the floodgates are open for the long diagonal, not to mention the f file. So black's getting in trouble now, and if he takes, it gets even more choppy. So he plays rook c8, and white just goes with the pawn storm. And now it's just like space advantage. I'm sure that white is clearly better. Knight e8, f4. And if only black could trade off the white square bishop somehow, if black's knight were on b8 and he could play bishop a6, he would possibly survive. I mean, if he could trade off the white square bishops, he could penetrate to the 7th rank too. But the problem is that knight is horrible. It's like this happens in the King's Indian attack a lot. He needs to play knight c7 and bishop a6 or something along those lines. By the way, I mean, maybe black retreated the knight to the wrong square. I mean, should it go to d7? Possibly. It's a normal Slav thing. I mean, knight d7, knight f8 as a defensive move, or knight b8, knight c6, or knight b8, bishop a6. I think that black's still getting rolled either way. It looks like the attack is too strong. I think that black is borderline lost based on this pawn. You know, the pawn advance, this avalanche is classic and very strong for white. Knight e8, though, not a great square. f4. And so, blockade, Nimzovich. But how? Like, if you play f5 here, my first thought would be to play f5. I guess this pawn is pretty weak. We have takes and this f5 move. And if you try to play, I mean, I don't know, like maybe knight f6 and we can play knight for knight e4. This is like similar to what happened in the game. f5, knight e4, bishop e4, pawn e4. And will the magic diagonal open up? You'll see. So in the game it was g6, rook e3, playing for rook h3, f5, queen h6 ideas. And then it's f5. He tries to blockade. And if white doesn't take en passant, it's really, really blocked now. So takes. Could consider... I mean, I guess you should consider queen takes, right? This knight has a square on d6. White is better, but I wonder how the oracle feels about this. Yes, he had to play queen takes f6. Major space advantage. Yeah, this bishop is restricted. As long as that's not in the game, black's more or less okay. But I think he had to play queen takes. He plays natural knight takes, hoping for knight e4. But that's where the game gets crazy. f5, knight e4, bishop e4, d e4, takes, opening the position. And this was amazing calculation. You know, I would have missed it, at least in a fast game. One would expect this to be a problem, this penetration. But Zukertort calculated pretty well here. So it's like takes, rook c2, takes, check. And there's threats. Obviously, queen e1, queen d1, and then back up here if the queen has to move. The black king is wide open. But I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, you're basically dead. If you take with the queen, right? Rook g3 check. Where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? You're dead, right? Here, d5 check, and black would have to sack. The exchange would be lost anyway. It's over. It's just over, man. It was like... just when you thought it was safe to come out of the water, you know, he buries you tactically. Bishop takes e4, takes, rook c2, takes. So he hides on h8, but it's d5 check. Now, it's possible that Blackburn actually saw all this, but thought he's okay because of e5. And that's the sickest part. So check it out. It looks like black's holding on, but you've got this decoy, queen b4. The point is, how do you get black away from the e5? And if you take the queen, bishop takes check, and you're just simply mated by rook h3. Wait, how is this again? Rook h3. It's been a while since I looked at this. Is it check here? King g5, check. This is complicated. Let's check it with the computer, because I just don't have that much time. It's mate at 14. Alright, let's see. Queen b4, bishop takes e5 check, king h7, rook h3 check, king g6, rook g3 check. Right? I guess I looked at rook f6. King h6 is actually forced mate. So he worked all this out, Astrobate style. Check, check, here, check, and then rook h5. This was actually worked out. He didn't play this on a gut instinct. I would have never found it in a blitz game. I would have had a hard time being short and calculated in a rapid game, honestly. But it was all worked out. Specializing in mate in 14, queen b4, distracting black from defensive e5, and so he can still defend with rook there. This is sick, man. I mean, I don't know, he probably had quite a long time control to think, but still. It still looks like black is okay now. But you've got this. Check. Maybe that's even more striking than the other move. Rook sacrifice. You have to do something. Either take it or play king h7. And they're both bad. King h7, queen e4 check. And obviously now, I mean, it's pretty obvious at this point that the black king is is dead. I mean, this is the only move. You have to attack something. Now there's 2 pieces attacked. King g7. And check this out. Computer wants to play rook g8 check. I've never really analyzed this game with a computer. At least not in the last 20 years. Evidently that's strongest. Check, king takes, check, queen g7, queen e8, and then obviously, let's say king h7, you're mating him or winning the queen with check. It's actually mate. Here, check and mate. So, you just feel that it's mate, but he missed rook g8. Check, here. Sorry, check, king h7, queen e4, king g7, and the game was bishop takes e5 check. And he's winning the queen. It's actually mate, maybe mate by force, but obviously here it just looks like, okay. There's this move. It's irresistible. It's a cute move. I mean, queen g7 and queen e8 mate is cute and easy to see. So that's aesthetic, but it wasn't technically the best move. Now king g8, and he just takes the queen. And that's pretty clear now. I mean, we're up queen for a rook, and black doesn't really have any counterplay. This game is nice from positional. Yeah, I mean, it was a very positional game. Exactly, Morales. It just happened that there were these vicious mating variations at the end. It was essentially like a totally positional game. In a positional opening, you know. Not like a Morphe sort of hack and slash style game. I mean, it's much more mature than a Morphe game, in a sense. We're playing a sophisticated, closed queen-pawn game. He had played for a small advantage, then he got that pawn roller, like Pillsbury, sort of. Okay, good game. Now the next one, I've got a short stream today, guys. Half a stream, basically. Just gotta go due to daylight savings time. Zukertort Blackburn, this is round 22. It was like an insane tournament, by the way. London 1883 that Zukertort won. Like, all the best players, 22 rounds or more. I don't know how many rounds it was. Double round robin, I think. Can't remember. Maybe it wasn't. No, it had to be at least a double round. Because they played twice, duh. So Zukertort Blackburn were round 22. Check it out. Same opening. You've seen this positional side of the what? The game thanks to you. Everyone who studied chess remembers the final combination. I still can't find my favorite Zukertort game. It's really weird. I'm gonna have to keep searching. There's this game I knew that I can't find in the database. One of these days we'll find it. Alright, so this is the next game with Zukertort Blackburn. d4, e6. Blackburn played the French. The French was fairly popular in these days. Saw a lot of exchange Frenches. People like to open the game with, like, you know, e4, d5, pawn takes pawn. This is a very common opening in the second half of the 19th century. Very typical. Like today we consider you like a wimp for playing the exchange variation, but in those days they loved to just get an open line. It felt very classical, I guess. But no, it's e6 knight f3. This is, you know, not a player who was traditionally given credit for being hyper modern, but if you think about it, both of these guys are playing in a very hyper modern way. e6 and knight f3. You know, there's no d5. There's no e4. Knight f6. Blackburn could play hypermodern chess. e3, and now we've got the traditional Kali system. So, I mean, this is where we start to see the true, what we call today, Kali Zukertort. After e3, now he does go classical with black. d5, bishop d3. Our own moderator, Mr. Coffee, likes to play. He likes to play, for example, Kali Zukertort. Mainline is like c5, and then white has to decide. Whether he's going to play like a reverse semi-Slav with c3, which I think is kind of passive. I mean, I've always preferred the Kali Zukertort type of stuff. You can even allow c4, because ultimately that pressure off of that is going to make it easy to break. No, Morales, queen e2 is not... that's not a good choice. Losing a piece for 2 pawns. You do have good control of your favorite central squares there. Alright. So this move is a little bit passive by black, I would say. Another good setup is probably b6, bishop b7. c5 is the main move, but okay, bishop b7 is fine. Castles, and now castles by black. I like b6 probably, bishop b7. Even bishop a6, trading pieces could be a weapon. Castles, b3, and now again he should play b6, bishop b7 probably. c5 is standard, but the problem is I don't think that you want your bishop on e7 in this type of formation. Black really wants the bishop on d6, knight on c6, something like queen e7 or queen c7, and trying to play for control of e5. Black would try to play more actively to gain control of the e5 square. If he can take control of e5, he'll equalize at least. But with the bishop on e7, I'm not sure this plan of playing c5 is the best. Bishop e2, it's still playable. And again, I think like b6 probably best. He plays knight c6, knight on bd2. Now we have a basically reversed version of their last game. They switched sides. So it's crazy, If queen e2, we have knight b4, just like what happened in the last game with colors reversed. But Zukertort doesn't need to play a3 unless this is concrete threat. So knight on bd2. If knight b4 fine, we go back to e2. It's probably not a big problem. We'll gain the time back with a3. On the other hand, I think, it's possible to play a3. And if black had a more active setup like bishop d6, maybe he could play for e5, but there's no time here. So knight on bd2. Later we will see this in the games of like Akiba Rubinstein, who was no doubt influenced. Rubinstein certainly, didn't just start playing the Zukertort with white like out of the blue. He didn't just make it up. He was probably influenced by Zukertort's play. Rubinstein on a regular basis playing the setup with white late, like 15 years later. Knight on bd2, cd4. So this is generally considered to be a premature exchange, I would say. It's okay, but why? Does this benefit black in some way? Does releasing the tension benefit black in any concrete way? Like, I don't know, maybe he just doesn't want to allow d takes c5. But I mean, that's also a concession for white, giving up his strong point on the in the center. So I would think like black should probably just play b6. Again, I would prefer the bishop on d6, but I guess b6 here, pretty standard. We'll probably find like modern Grandmaster games if we put in b6. cd4, perhaps premature exchange. It's never terrible to exchange d4 when the white is fianchettoed, because the bishop kind of dies. This is lame. Lame. Draw. After a draw. After knight takes d4. Jim will play like that. Our friend Jim, who plays a lot of b3 setups. But, guys, welcome to the stream. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, this keeps the bishop open, but we don't have a center after this, so black is more or less equal. Knight takes d4. We've got pawn takes, the classical move. And again, this is like seen later in Rubinstein's games. Even the games of like Paul Keary's, for example, in the like 50s. 40s and 50s, you would see Keary's playing these type of setups in the structure with a3 and c4 and sort of hanging pawns positions. It's dynamic. Snuggle snail. Snuggle the snail. Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming by. Um, Guys, we had a follow earlier. Appreciate it. So E takes D4. I don't know where everyone is today. It's like there's no one here. There's no Magnus Carlsen tournament going on or anything. I don't get it. Why is there no one here? What is it with Wednesday? Like Monday morning we had a lot of followers. But Wednesdays there's something going on. Magnus Carlsen's not even holding a tournament. Alright, so E takes D4, B6. This is reasonable. But again, I don't see how black really benefited by exchanging off his strong point. Pawn on C5. C4. And this is interesting. But white can choose two possible retreats, and I'm not sure that knight b4 benefits black. So Blackburn now played bishop a6. KG move. What I find interesting is Zukertort's unwillingness to play a3. He didn't want to weaken his queenside pawns. Modern players of the system will play a3 at the drop of a hat, basically. It's not really that weakening. There is a slight weakening. Rook e1, rook c8, and now rook c1. Again, if knight b4, this is covered. So we can pull our bishop back to b1, and the knight on b4 will be embarrassed. Another thing is, obviously, if black puts his knight on b4, you leave a huge gaping weakness on e5 for the white knight to come in. So this is a classic Zukertort system. Rook e1, rook c8, rook c1, and now knight a5, Blackburn tying him down to the c4 pawn. Looks like stuff like bishop b4 could be played to try to take advantage of this pin. Another point of a3. Now, if this was a blitz game, I would almost certainly seriously consider playing a3. This is not so easy to take advantage of. I mean, I guess there's tactics like take, maybe knight d5, taking advantage that the bishop's not defended, but at the end of the day, like, what are you going to do? And it's that bishop again. Could we see another example of Blackburn getting hammered by the sneaky hidden tiger bishop? Crouching tiger, hidden dragon. Alright, whatever. I mean, it's possible that that's going to happen. Knight e5, bishop b4. That was my concern a little bit, this diagonal. So all of a sudden it goes totally positional again. You know, this isn't like a tactical madman. This guy is like a great positional player who happens to be really good at tactics too. You know, that's the way I would describe Zukertort. Essentially like a very strong positional player who just happens to be good at tactics. So check it out. Just when you expect he's aiming for like a kingside attack, c5. Whoa, where did that come from? I mean, you could call this like an opportunistic tactical move, but it's based on almost entirely strategic considerations. He's basically forcing the exchange of these bishops, which is technically bad for white. His good bishop goes, takes, and now he forces another exchange, but this monster on c5. And the bad bishop could potentially be unleashed. And white has this really, really strong pawn on c5. And that's all it takes. Knight e4 in his face. He's just like, whatever, queen e3, and your knight is only temporary. That seems like a theme, right? That happened in the last game. Knight on e4, mighty for a moment, but you're just kicking it out. So he outplays like Blackburn strategically. Again, rook e8, f3. You're gone. That was... See, I think that Blackburn was used to playing weaker players or something. You know, I mean, he kind of played like mindlessly here. He was a great player, but not very deep in this game, or in the last game. He probably played too many games with like Potzers in the coffee house. So he's just playing his coffee house style. Knight f6, rook c2, and everything behind that the passed pawn. Maybe black can defend here, but it's going to take Karpov or some sort of godlike defender. Knight d7, trying to defend now. Rook e c1, b takes c5. I guess. I mean, this is live. c6, is this a threat? I'm not sure. Ultimately, here we go again. You know, kind of like... Agnes Karadewski, thank you for the donation, 100 bits. Unfortunately, just a short stream, guys, because of daylight savings time. I'm gonna have to leave in about 40 minutes. How strong is the threat of playing c6? Big question. Because I don't want to take on c5 and let the floodgates loose again. But he does it. And now the pawn structure becomes very dynamic. But you know who is back? The bishop on b2. And now there's this huge threat of playing c6, I assume. So there's no time for like e5. It would be nice to play e5 and try to get some counterplay in the center. Can we do that? e5, c6, d4? No, because of this. That's it. It's game over. You just can't do it. There's no time. I guess you could play e5, c6, knight b6 maybe. But now e5 is falling. For example, it's actually similar to the game. Something like knight takes c6, f6, queen c5. Like takes. I mean, this kind of position looks like could happen. White's clearly better with an extra pawn on the 6th rank. Okay, there's complications. But b takes c5, d takes c5, knight b8, trying to blockade. And now knight e5. And now this becomes a threat. For the first time, knight c4 won't like stuff white's whole position if you play b4. So you're actually threatening to advance the queen side in devastating fashion now. This is not really a king side attacking move. It's just like controlling these key squares and buying time to play b4. So f6. But here's the thing. Here you got this guy who's this good positional player. That's what he did. And he just happens to be great at tactics too. He's like, whatever, c6. And Morales' favorite square plays a pivotal role here. I mean, you're threatening c7 anyway, right? I mean, after takes, if you take, it's like even this is good. We don't need to do anything fancy. It's devastation. But I was wondering if we can do this as well. Maybe black has time to defend with rook e7. I mean, still, you're playing c7, right? Whatever it is, it's not good. So f6 is not really a threat. White has c6. And that pawn just goes to c7, forking pieces. Knight b8 was kind of a tragic move. If we step back one move, black has to have better than knight b8, maybe. Yeah. Okay, so this was a blunder. Big time. This was the end of the game, essentially. He had to play knight c6. Major blunder. Black is okay after knight c6. You know, now all hell breaks loose after maybe b4, e5. So the computer wants white to play f4. White definitely firmly has the initiative in this position, but he's not winning. He's calling the shots with his queenside majority. but it's not over. This was a massive blunder. D takes c5, knight b8. And now both knights are in la la land on the queen side. Banking on f6 that doesn't threaten anything, and then c6, which kills the b8 knight, and the fork's on c7. Here. And now it's just opportunistic tactics. Queen d2. Knight has no squares. Nothing's protecting it. And he just trades. But this is a terrible endgame. The passed pawn is just a murderer. And the threat of bishop takes c5, you're just basically losing a pawn. And at the end of the day, black's pawns are going to be blockaded. It's terrible. And now I guess you can't take on c6 because of tactics, right? Like rook c6, knight c6, queen a4, resigns. Terrible. So it's really nice the way he gets control of the Morales' favorite square with e5, and then rook f7 just simply is like, I don't care, I'm going to make it simple. Take. c7, pawn on the 7th rank. Queen c8, blockading with the queen, which I mentioned yesterday, jokingly in my stream. He studied Morales' games. This is not a good blockader. You don't want to blockade with the bigger pieces. You want to blockade with a knight or something, but there's no knights left to blockade with, so he just takes another pawn. And then it's 3 connected passed pawns. Hello. Black's counterplay is not fast enough. I imagine he played rook c5, maybe there's something even better. b4 is a little slow. So rook c5. Yeah, this is best, probably. It's not about the pawn. e4, typical Morales move. Rook b5. Just not quite fast enough with your queen g4 threats. A little allusion to our yesterday's game with Morales. Now black has, it's like Morales versus Morales. He has e4 for black and e5 with white in the same game. Just not fast enough with your counterplay. Threatening rook b8. Whoops. There's no time for like pawn takes pawn, right? It's just over. It's just over. There's just here, and there's a check, but it's not going to work. You know, you can do check. We just blockade with the king. King is a good blockader. What about, yeah, nothing to do. It's over. Queen d7, check, takes, and like c8, resigns. So there's nothing. Yeah, another positional game. Rook c5. Tactics are the execution of the positional advantage. A little bit of like Botvinnik almost. Zukertort did some weird stuff, like against Steinitz in their World Championship match. He played some very strange games. You guys know that, actually interesting fact, a lot of people widely considered Zukertort Steinitz to be the first World Championship match. Interesting fact was the fact that Zukertort went off on him and got a 4-1 lead against Steinitz in that match in 1886. He was leading 4-1 in a relatively, not that long match and lost it. He was playing crazy stuff. There were some really sloppy games, especially in the beginning of the match. But Zukertort had some weird ideas. The execution of the positional advantage, exactly. That's my philosophy. Not everyone agrees. All right, so rook b5 and then rook f8, trying to defend the back rank. Rook b8 here, take, and then queen a4. This was like a kind of safe way to play it, I mean, it's not pretty, it's not aesthetic, but he just has a passed pawn behind his rook, and black's position is ruined. Look at that structure. Beautiful. Easy peasy. Nothing to do. We have a little money in the bank there with those A pawns. Easy game. All right, so that was another nice sort of positional game by white. This is probably my favorite. He's actually black against Zukertort. This is from the aforementioned match in 1886. So, what I know historically is that Steinitz moved to the United States and was now living in the U.S. He'd immigrated from Germany to the United States. And he wanted to play the World Championship match in the United States, but Zukertort, his backers or whatever, wanted to have it held in, I guess, London. So they ended up having the match played in like different cities. But I think that maybe Zukertort should have done better overall. He ended up losing the match tragically after a 4-1 lead. But he definitely didn't want to play in the United States. So he was out of his element, I think, in these games where he had to play in the U.S. E4, E5. Knight F3. Knight C6. D4. So Steinitz plays the Scotch with white. Takes, Knight F6. I like the Scotch. This variation with like Knight takes C6. I don't think much of the Scotch for knights. You know, it's playable, but it seems like it's rather easy for black to equalize. So if you play this, you have to be aware that, you know, all you can get with white is like equality, and try to outplay your opponent later. You know, in the normal Scotch, it's very complex. You might be able to play for an advantage or very sharp positions, but here, I just don't think it offers white much. The other thing that's interesting is really Scotch for knights, I mean, played by other famous players like Nimzovich himself with white. I mean, there's some positional ideas, but even in modern times, white doesn't get anything. Bishop b4, and now there's no good waiting move for white, so he has to exchange anyway, which is almost like a concession, trading pieces and bringing a black pawn toward the center with b takes c. Obviously, d takes c would leave black in an inferior endgame where white has a strong pawn on e4. This is no good for black. But b takes c is fine. Black is fine. A lot of people have too much weight on, like, oh, you have a double pawn. Double pawns are bad. I mean, these are powerful double pawns in the center. Hopefully we'll undouble. Bishop d3, d5, ed5. So this is an interesting position, by the way. The modern take on this is castles. I've seen a bunch of recent games where for some reason for years and years everybody automatically recaptured on d5. But this only gives like white a way to go wrong. Like if he's greedy here, black can get a wicked initiative. I've seen some cases of modern games where white actually lost. I think one Mitkov game or something where he tried to do this with white and lost. It's very, very dangerous. So you don't even have to recapture, you can just play castles. Anyway, c takes d5, castles, bishop g5, and now c6. This is main line even today. There are different lines. Queen f3, knight a4, knight e2, pretty much all playable. But I think all of them, black is equal. Knight e2, bishop d6, knight g3, and now h6. By the way, black is threatening bishop takes h2 check and knight g4 check in this position. So the bishop doesn't want to give itself up for that knight. That's black's good bishop. Knight g3, and now h6, and it's possible to take, but this obviously doesn't promise much for white. Black's dark square bishop's unopposed. I think he's slightly better. So bishop d2, and now knight g4. And unfortunately our opening explorer is busted by the fire, but I believe there's actually maybe a couple modern games where this has actually been reached. I saw. So white plays bishop e2. Steinitz actually defends very well here. It's been a while since I looked at this. At one point I did a fairly in-depth analysis. But I do think that Steinitz is on the defensive, but he manages to handle it pretty well. Bishop e2. Realizing how powerful this knight is, h3 is knight f2. This was a tactical sequence that isn't a no-brainer, by the way, if I remember correctly. It's possible to play king f2. And then queen h4, queen f3, f5, if my mind isn't completely gone. I think this is it. And black is like winning after f5. If my old analysis serves correctly. I don't know, maybe winning is too strong a word. But what is white going to do? Thanks for following my own Dev Kalana. So let's check with the Oracle. I'm pretty sure this was analysis. Yeah, computer says that white has to just bail and run away. So I mean, that's pretty good judgment by Steinitz, right? He saw this. You know, most people would have fallen into this trap and lost a pawn. Steinitz was like, nope, I see that. You know, I'm not even going to touch my h-pawn. So he plays bishop e2, which arguably is like a better practical defense. Now, best move for black, queen h4, but he can hack the knight off. And of course it's a concession to give up your bishop, but he's managing to avoid making any pawn weaknesses. This is something I think, you know, you start to see in Steinitz's games really, really strongly at one point. He just does not make pawn weaknesses. He was, yeah, this is another Morales theme, but if you don't make pawn weaknesses, it's hard to beat you. You know, he doesn't make any pawn weaknesses. Bishop takes g4, queen c1, and it's a good battle by both sides, honestly. Bishop e2. This might be a mistake by black. Maybe there's another way to continue the black attack. Bishop e2 is like a fancy move, but ultimately it might almost force white to make a constructive move with rook e1. You gotta be careful about doing that, like attacking things because it feels aggressive. Like, that doesn't mean anything. Maybe you're just helping this guy make a useful move, develop your rook to e1. Hey, while I play bishop e2. It seems to me this was an inaccuracy for black, but I can't remember what the right move was. Maybe rook a e8. In retrospect, it was probably something like this. I mean, Steinitz could pull a Nimzovich or something and try to break up the pawns with one swoop. Another thing, there's a problem I remember. We have to watch for bishop f4. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a threat in a way. Black doesn't want to trade the bishop pair off. If we do this, we've messed up our whole position. Like, white is fine now. We have the worst pawn structure, and he eliminated our bishop pair. We have to be very careful about trading off our bishop pair. So like bishop f4, for example, maybe bishop c5. But Zukertort like wanted to keep the initiative. He saw this cued move, bishop e2. Does it help though? Rook e1. Now we have to waste time. We go back, bishop a6. But ultimately, I think this diagonal might have been the better diagonal for the black bishop. So white plays bishop c3, trying to creep his queen back in the game, and obviously there are threats of bishop g7. Bishop g7 is an immediate threat. Bishop g7, king g7, knight f5 check. So this stops knight f5, and it's a natural attacking move anyway. Now the problem is there's a hole here on e6. So Steinitz like plonk, he goes right for it. Rook a d8. The queen is covering b4, so there's no rook takes d6, bishop b4, but white plays queen d2, threatening to simplify. Rook takes d6, rook d6, bishop b4. So black plays, check this out now, d4. And we can't take it because of discoveries. The rook is indirectly defending d4. So he has to move his bishop. Bishop a5 was played now. Bishop b4, just c5, I guess. Is it possible to play bishop b4? Because that's what I'd like to play. Bishop b4, c5, rook d6. You know, it's been a while since I looked at this game, but I'm wondering if this was recommended. I have it in my subconscious somewhere. Rook d6, bishop c5, and black is okay. I mean, white is okay. Can we trade pieces and eliminate the bishop pair? Let's check it out. The computer likes bishop a5, but if bishop b4, black should trade and continue with the attack on the king side. You got f3 stuff. So bishop a5, hitting the rook. Now rook d7, forced, and now he takes. All right. Rook d6, bishop e4, simplifying. And Steinitz is like, all right, I'm hanging on. I traded the bishop off. Check this out. Bishop e4, queen f6, rook d1, rook d5. He takes off this guy and gets the material back, so it's equal, right? Theoretically, material is equal. And now, theoretically, white could actually be better because black has made a lot of pawn moves. Okay, not a7, but it's isolated, extended, overextended. So black has made all these pawn moves. Steinitz's pawns are all on the second rank, creating no weaknesses. The only problem is that white has to be careful of back rank mate in this position. This is a great game between two great players, by the way. World Championship match. At one point he plays h4 soon. Knight h5, trying to get like control of the dark squares and make black's bishop a bad piece. Queen e8, open file, and this is going to be important now. Open file, back rank mate, hitting the knight, and possibilities of rook e5. So black gets this initiative. Now, knight f4, rook e5, and the bishop helping to make mating possibilities. Black controls the only open file. h4, no back rank mate, locking the knight on f4. It's a good game, but we have time to protect now with c5. So who's better? It's tough. Very, very close. h5, and maybe h5 was a mistake. He was obviously worried about g5 at some point. So he wants to lock the knight in there. But I guess h5 is inaccuracy. He's supposed to play b4, breaking up the queen side. Nimzovich. This move is strong. It breaks up the pawn chain. I mean, the d4 pawn is totally killing white. It's like single-handedly forming a barrier between the whole white and black positions. Before bishop e4, the immediate rook d6. h5 is not purely bad, but it gives black time. That's the issue. You're wasting time. It's not a bad move strategically. It's not like a problem that you put the pawn on h5. The problem is it gives black a move, rook e4. And you understand the problem. If you play g3, bad things will happen. So if you decide to play g3, it's all of a sudden, oh my god, you know, the long diagonal, and it's over. This is the issue. Like, your knight has to be babysitting, the queen has to be babysitting the knight on f4 now. And f3 weakens his position. This ends up being pivotal. White is under pressure now. He's tied down. He's got to worry about the e-file, keeping his knight protected. He can't play g3 without like fatally weakening his whole long diagonal. And so the pressure is on white here. It's too late to play b4. That was a moment he missed. And now c3. But now this is a passed pawn, is it not? The moment that the d-pawn becomes passed, when white plays c3. So check out this endgame. Queen b8. And there's terrible invasions if your knight moves. So he had to defend it, and then the diagonal goes. And now black centralizes. Look at those pieces, man. And f3 allows the invasion with rook e3. So this is a great endgame, by the way. He plays knight g6, queen d6, knight f4, and then d3. The power of the passed pawn. Based on tactics, obviously, knight d3, bishop d3, queen d3, rook e1, check. Thank you very much for your cooperation. d3 is extremely strong. You can't take it, and now he's starting to cement it with c4. So he tries to prevent that with b3. Black plays c4 anyway. It's essentially a protected passed pawn. And now Steinitz is really in trouble. I'm not sure if there's defense here for white. Looks like he's still hanging on. But it's not easy. Let the computer have a little time. This is Stockfish 11, by the way. It looks like he can still hang on. f3. And now you can play f3. Because the e3 square isn't exposed. He didn't want to weaken his kingside more, but it looks like it's probably necessary. He could have held on. He played rook b1, king h7, king h2, and now queen b6, pinning the pawn. King g1, bishop b7, and that's a big problem. So he's getting ready to play f3 now. Queen c6, f3. Now, I mean, this looks scary. I mean, what's happening if rook e2? Rook e2, knight e2, queen takes. There's no mate. We control g2. But I mean, what the heck is happening here? Is some sort of draw? It's a draw. Unbelievably, like, this doesn't work. Black's actually losing there. You have to just take a draw of a rep here. So that's not good enough. Apparently rook e8 simply is winning. According to Stockfish. It's too strong now. He played this. Queen f2, rook e1 check, king h2. Which enables us to see this interesting endgame. Queen takes, rook takes. I think the black is winning anyway. Steinitz thought everything was holding on. Probably in time pressure, I would assume. You know, he had to choose, and he chose to trade queens and go into this ending where he figures everything's okay. We're undermining the pawn on c4. We've got d2 blockaded. Everything's alright until this happens. Bishop takes f3. And it's over. I guess he just like missed bishop takes f3. Bishop takes f3 is like game over. Because you can't take it, d2. And now the bishop is just killing. Bishop takes f3. I guess black's even threatening rook e2 in some positions. Or bishop e2. Sheltering the pawn. Princess Chess, welcome. We're almost done here. The end of game 3. You arrived at the moment of the denouement. Steinitz thought he was surviving in this endgame, but he allowed bishop takes f3. And now he's getting mated with rook h1. And he can't take. So he has to play g4. And it's just totally over. Bishop e2, threatening d2. Knight g2. I mean, this is desperation. Knight g2, if d2, knight e3. That's the game. Take, take, take. Attacking the knight and threatening the queen. So it's over. It was, I thought, a good game. I think that this game, if I'm not mistaken, is actually analyzed in the most instructive chess games ever played by Chernev. I'm pretty sure I've played through that book more than once. Tremendous endgame, very interesting. Objectively, it looks like Steinitz could have held with perfect play at one point. But a great battle, a very instructive game. We saw 3 cool games by Zukertort, 2 wins against Blackburn and now a win against Steinitz. Was a fantastic player. We see a really positional style with tactical acuity mixed in, essentially. Not an overtly, 19th century attacking player necessarily in a strict sense. Especially the very hyper-modern opening with the Zukertort, knight f3, things like c4. But I mean, this was a classical opening, Scotch with black. Guys, I've got to go. This was just a short stream. I'm going to put it on YouTube. Don't forget to check out my YouTube channel and also the Discord. Short stream week for the morning streams this week due to daylight savings time. I will be back with our subscriber stream tomorrow night. This is like a good class stream, though. Digestible, a little over an hour. Definitely worth reviewing on YouTube. All right, guys. So for Thursday, we've got a number of submissions for the stream. Thursday is our subscriber analysis stream, so you can submit games if you're a subscriber to the stream. Sadamasa, Mr. Slow, Move 11, Schieberspieler, Fide Master, and Princess. I don't know. Asterbate, did you submit a game and I didn't put you on the list? Asterbate should be on the list, I think. Maybe not. Maybe he was slacking this week. Alright, guys and girls. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We will be back tomorrow night. Just a short stream. Stay in the mix today. I'll see everybody tomorrow night at 6:30 CEST. Central European Summertime. Got to update that. Alright, guys. Thanks for watching. And we'll check you out later. Bye-bye.